CEO needs a fake date for his ex's engagement party, but she turns heads and steals the spotlight. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. Jake Armstrong, the CEO of Armstrong Technologies, was about to face a night he'd rather forget. A successful businessman with the world at his feet, Jake had everything anyone could dream of except for love. His ex-fiancée, Claire, had just sent out an invitation to her engagement party. And naturally, she expected Jake to be there. The catch? She had invited her new boyfriend, a man Jake had always considered second-rate. So, in his typical no-nonsense way, Jake decided to handle the situation by hiring a fake date. Enter Emily. Emily had always struggled to find her place in the world. At 28, she was working as a waitress at a downtown bistro, just barely making ends meet. She'd always dreamed of a different life, one where she didn't have to worry about bills or living paycheck to paycheck. That dream felt far out of reach, but when Jake offered her a substantial amount of money to accompany him to his ex's engagement party as his girlfriend, she couldn't refuse. It seemed simple enough. Show up, play the part, and leave with a check in hand. No emotions, no strings attached. But the moment she walked into the ballroom at the engagement party, Emily realized things wouldn't be so easy. The glitz and glamour of the event made her feel out of place. Her dress was beautiful, but it didn't compare to the designer gowns of the other women in the room. As Jake led her through the crowd, she could feel the eyes of the guests on them. She couldn't help but feel a little like an imposter. Jake, on the other hand, was calm and collected. As always, he commanded attention. But tonight, there was something different about the way he looked at her. He had hired her to be a temporary solution to a petty problem, but there was something about Emily that intrigued him. She wasn't like the women he usually encountered, polished, poised, and predictable. Emily was real. She was awkward in the most charming way. And despite her discomfort, she managed to make him smile. As they moved through the crowd, the guests couldn't stop staring. Emily, the unassuming waitress who had never once imagined she'd be at an event like this, was turning heads. Her beauty wasn't the kind that demanded attention. But there was an authenticity about her that made people take notice. Jake's ex-fiancée, Claire, watched from across the room, her eyes narrowing as she saw the way Jake was interacting with Emily. She hadn't expected him to show up with such a captivating woman by his side. For a moment, Claire's confidence wavered. Emily wasn't just a placeholder. She wasn't just a fake date. She was a woman who made Jake laugh, made him feel something he hadn't in a long time, something real. And the way she carried herself, though unsure at first, was growing stronger with every passing second. As the night went on, Emily couldn't help but wonder if this was how the other half lived. She had always dreamed of a life like this, one of luxury and ease, but now that she was here, she realized it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. People were fake. Conversations were shallow, and despite the glittering lights and expensive champagne, there was something missing. She felt out of place, and yet, there was something in Jake's gaze that made her feel seen. Maybe it was the way he kept looking at her when he thought no one was paying attention. Maybe it was the way he took her hand, not as a business transaction, but as if he genuinely wanted her to be there. Jake couldn't help but notice the change in Emily throughout the night. She started off tense, unsure of herself. But by the end of the evening, there was a spark in her eyes, a confidence that hadn't been there when they first met. It was almost as if she had been playing a role for so long, she had forgotten who she really was. But tonight, she had let her guard down, and in doing so, she had unknowingly captured Jake's attention in a way he hadn't expected. As the evening drew to a close, Claire approached them. There was tension in the air, an unspoken challenge between the two women. Claire's smile was tight, and as she looked at Emily, it was clear she didn't like the way Jake was treating her, like she wasn't just a hired hand, but someone he actually cared about. Jake could feel the shift. He knew he had to make a decision. Was Emily just a temporary fix, or had he found something more? Was he willing to let go of the life he had always known in exchange for the unpredictable, the genuine, and the real? Jake knew he had to make a choice, one that would change everything. As the night continued, Emily couldn't help but feel like she was caught in a whirlwind. Jake, the man she had been hired to pretend to date, was different from any man she had ever met. His presence in the room was commanding, but there was something in the way he interacted with her that made her wonder if he was playing a game, or if maybe, just maybe, this was something more. They had come to the engagement party with one purpose, for her to be his fake date. But now, as the evening unfolded, Emily felt a growing sense of connection that she hadn't expected. She had always believed that wealth and power were the answers to everything. But tonight, surrounded by the glittering lights of the ballroom, she realized how empty it all felt. The conversations felt hollow, the laughter seemed forced, and as much as she tried to immerse herself in the luxury of it all, something kept tugging at her, something that had nothing to do with the expensive dresses or the champagne. It was Jake. His presence made her feel seen, in a way she never had before. It wasn't the superficial glance of someone impressed by her looks. No, Jake had been genuinely interested in her. The way he had listened to her talk about her dreams, her struggles, her fears, he had actually cared. She hadn't expected that. Jake, meanwhile, was noticing things he hadn't noticed before. The way Emily laughed at something he said, even when it wasn't particularly funny. The way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her passion for art, something she had kept hidden for so long. Emily wasn't just a fake date to him anymore. She was real. She was different. As the night went on, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was no longer just a transaction. They were no longer playing roles. They were two people, connected by something he couldn't quite put his finger on. When Claire, his ex-fiancée, approached them again, he noticed how tense Emily had become. She was trying to play it cool, but he could see the discomfort in her eyes. Claire was charming, beautiful, and confident. But there was something about her that rubbed Jake the wrong way now. It wasn't just the way she looked at Emily, like she was some kind of obstacle. It was the way she still seemed to hold power over him. It was clear to Jake that Claire had always been a part of his life, a world he had known. But Emily? She was new. She was a mystery. And Jake found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't anticipated. After Claire left, Emily turned to Jake, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know what I'm doing here," she said quietly. "I'm just a waitress, Jake. I don't belong in a place like this." Jake shook his head, his voice soft. "You belong wherever you want to belong, Emily." Her eyes widened at his words, and for a brief moment, it felt like the whole world had paused. There was no pretense, no acting, just two people, standing in the middle of an event that neither of them had ever imagined they'd be part of. The night came to a close, and as they left the venue, Emily couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. She had come in as a hired hand, but now she was leaving with something much more significant. Jake had offered her more than just money. He had offered her a glimpse into a life she had always dreamed of, a life where she wasn't invisible, where she mattered. But Emily knew that she had to guard her heart. She couldn't let herself get too caught up in this. She was just playing a part, right? As they stood outside the venue, waiting for the car to take them back, Jake turned to her. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "This wasn't just about you helping me out tonight. I can't stop thinking about how real you are." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake took a step closer, his eyes locking with hers. "I mean that tonight. I didn't feel like I was just at an event. I felt like I was with someone who made me feel something. Something I haven't felt in a long time." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had always thought that people like Jake only cared about wealth and status. But in that moment, standing there with him, she realized how wrong she had been. "You don't have to say that," she said softly, her voice trembling. Jake smiled, his expression warm. "I do, Emily. You've shown me a side of life I didn't know I was missing. You've made me feel something that goes beyond money and appearances." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered in the distance, casting a soft glow over the night. Emily had come into this situation with nothing but the intention to help Jake out. But now, she found herself questioning everything. Was this just a fleeting moment? Or could this connection between them be the real thing? The days that followed were a blur of emotions and confusion for Emily. She couldn't stop thinking about what Jake had said that night outside the engagement party. She had come into his life to play a role, to be his temporary solution, but now she found herself questioning everything. Was this just a momentary connection, a fleeting feeling, or was there something more to it? She couldn't deny the attraction she felt towards him. There was something about Jake's presence that made her feel seen, in a way she hadn't felt before. He was rich, powerful, and everything she had dreamed of in a man. But there was more to him than just his wealth. His sincerity, the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel, it wasn't just about appearances. It was real, and that scared her. She had always been told that people like Jake didn't care about people like her. She had always thought that money and status were everything, but now she wasn't so sure. She had never experienced anything like this before. Meanwhile, Jake found himself preoccupied with thoughts of Emily. She had somehow made him forget about all the things that usually defined his world. Business deals, meetings, social events. He couldn't stop thinking about how different she was from the women he was used to. Emily wasn't just another beautiful face in the crowd. She was someone who made him laugh, who challenged him in ways no one ever had. She didn't play by the rules, and that was something Jake found fascinating. But the more he thought about her, the more confused he became. He had hired her to be his fake date, and now he was starting to question his own feelings. Was this just a passing attraction, or was there something more? He had never been in a situation like this before. Jake tried to push these thoughts aside as he focused on work, but every time he saw her, he couldn't help but feel drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. He tried to remind himself that she was just a temporary solution to a problem, but deep down, he knew that what they shared went beyond that. It wasn't just a transaction anymore. They had connected on a deeper level. As the days passed, Jake found himself reaching out to Emily more. He'd send her messages, checking in on her, asking how her day had been. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about wanting to know her, to understand her. Emily was hesitant at first, unsure of how to respond to Jake's sudden interest. She had agreed to this arrangement for the money, for the opportunity to get ahead, but now she found herself emotionally invested in him. She wasn't sure if she could trust her own feelings, but she couldn't ignore the way he made her feel. One afternoon, Jake invited Emily to meet him for coffee. It wasn't a business meeting, it was just the two of them, casually sitting down to talk. Emily felt a wave of nerves wash over her as she walked into the cafe. She had no idea what Jake expected from her, but she wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever this might become. When she saw him sitting at a corner table, a smile crept onto her face. He looked different today, more relaxed, less the CEO she had seen at the party. She walked over to him, her heart racing. "Hey," she said, her voice unsure. "Hey, Emily, glad you could make it." Jake's voice was warm, and there was something comforting in the way he spoke. It wasn't the same cold tone she had heard in the boardroom. This was different. They spent the next hour talking about everything, his childhood, her dreams, the things they both loved and hated about life. It was easy to talk to him, and Emily felt herself letting down her guard more and more. Jake wasn't the man she had first thought he was. He wasn't just a businessman, a man of power and status. He was someone who had depth, who cared, and who made her feel something she had never experienced before. As they finished their coffee, Jake looked at her, his expression serious. "Emily, I know this isn't what we agreed on," he said softly, "but I can't stop thinking about you. I know I hired you to be my fake date, but this feels real. I feel something for you." Emily's heart skipped a beat, and she looked away, unsure of how to respond. This wasn't what she had expected. She had come into this situation thinking she would leave with money and a story, but now she was being asked to consider something much bigger, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. She looked back at Jake, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jake, I don't know what to say. I'm not like the women you're used to. I'm just a waitress. I don't belong in your world." Jake reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You belong wherever you want to belong, Emily," he said, his voice sincere. "And if you want to be in my world, I'll do everything I can to make it happen." Emily stared at him, her heart pounding. Could this really be happening? Could she really see herself in this world with him? And more importantly, did she want to? For the first time since she had met Jake, she allowed herself to dream. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. Oh, the days that followed, however, were not as simple as Emily had hoped. Jake had made his feelings clear, but that did not mean it would be easy for her to accept. She was still unsure of herself, unsure of whether she could truly be a part of his world. Every moment she spent with him, every shared conversation, only deepened her confusion. It was easy to get lost in the way Jake looked at her, the way he seemed to care, but she couldn't help but wonder if this was all just part of the game. Maybe he was just being kind because he felt guilty for hiring her in the first place. Maybe it was all just business. She had to remind herself why she was here in the first place. She had come to be his temporary date. There was no room for love in this arrangement. But Jake had started to feel like more than just a business partner to her. The way he took her hand when they were together, the way he smiled at her when no one was watching it, made her feel like something real could be there. She tried to push the thoughts away, but it was getting harder and harder. One evening, Jake invited her to dinner at a quiet restaurant. The dim lighting, the soft hum of conversation around them, made it feel like they were the only two people in the world. Emily looked at him across the table, trying to figure out where they stood. Was this still part of the act, or was this something more? "Jake," she began softly, unsure of how to word her question. "Do you ever think about what happens after this is over?" Jake took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers. "I think about it more than you know," he said quietly. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Was he feeling the same way she was? Or was he just as uncertain about this whole thing as she was? Before she could say anything else, their food arrived, and the moment passed. The rest of the evening felt like an endless series of awkward silences and half-finished sentences. When they left the restaurant, Jake walked her to her car. "Emily, he started, but paused. She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Jake, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, or what I should be doing. I'm just so confused." Jake placed his hand gently on her arm, his touch warm. "I know. I've been feeling the same way, but I can't help the way I feel. I know we started this as a business deal, but I'm starting to think it's more than that." Emily looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "But what about everything else? Your life, your career, your family, everything you've worked for?" Jake's expression softened. "None of that matters if I'm not being true to myself. And right now, being with you, it feels real. It feels like something worth pursuing. I don't want to let it go." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. Could this really be happening? Could Jake, someone who had everything, really want her? Someone who had nothing? But as she looked at him, she realized that maybe this was what she had been looking for all along. Someone who saw her for who she truly was, not just for the role she played. They stood there in silence for a few moments, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. Finally, Emily spoke. "I don't know where this will go, Jake, but I want to give it a chance. I want to see where this leads." Jake smiled, a genuine warm smile that made her heart flutter. "I'm glad, because I think this is the start of something incredible." They stood there for a moment longer, the uncertainty of the past few days starting to melt away, replaced by something new, hope. And for the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have the life she had always dreamed of. The days that followed felt like a dream to Emily, each one blurring into the next as she navigated this new, unexpected chapter of her life. She had agreed to give Jake a chance, to see where this connection between them could lead. But with every passing day, doubts crept in. She wasn't the kind of woman who belonged in his world. She had always known that. Jake was a CEO, a man who had everything: power, wealth, success. And what was she? A waitress with big dreams. A woman who had spent her life scraping by. Could someone like her really fit into his world? As much as she wanted to believe in what they were building, she couldn't help but fear that it was all just too good to be true. Jake seemed different, but how could she know for sure? Was he really interested in her, or was this just some fleeting infatuation? One evening, Jake invited her to a charity gala, one of those extravagant events that she had never imagined she would attend, let alone be invited to as someone's date. She had nothing to wear, of course, but Jake insisted she let him take care of everything. She found herself standing in front of a full-length mirror in a beautiful gown, her hair styled just so. For a moment, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. This wasn't the Emily who worked double shifts at a diner. This was someone else, someone who belonged in this world. And yet, even in the luxury of the dress and the glittering setting, she felt a sense of dread. What if she didn't belong here? What if she didn't fit in? She shook her head, trying to shake off the anxiety that crept in. Jake was waiting for her downstairs, his presence as commanding as ever. As she descended the staircase, she saw him standing in the foyer, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. He crossed the room to meet her, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. "You look stunning," he said softly, his voice full of admiration. Emily felt her heart flutter, but at the same time, she couldn't escape the nagging doubt that clung to her. She smiled nervously. "I don't know about stunning, but thank you." Jake held out his arm to her, and without thinking, she took it. They arrived at the gala, and the moment they stepped inside, Emily was overwhelmed by the opulence. The grand ballroom was filled with the city's elite business moguls, celebrities, and socialites, all mingling with champagne flutes in hand. Emily felt like an imposter, her nervousness taking over as they made their way through the crowd. Jake, however, was as confident as ever, his presence demanding attention from every corner of the room. As they made their way through the guests, Emily's gaze drifted to the grand stage at the far end of the room, where an auction was being held. She saw Jake's ex-fiancée, Claire, standing with a group of friends, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Claire's gaze was cold, calculating, and for a moment, Emily felt the weight of her judgment. She had never been one to care much about what others thought, but in this moment, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Jake seemed to sense her discomfort and leaned in, his voice low. "Ignore her," he whispered. "You're the one I'm here with tonight." She nodded, grateful for the reassurance, but a part of her couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. This wasn't just a date anymore. This was a world she didn't understand, one filled with expectations and judgments she couldn't quite navigate. As the night went on, Emily found herself in conversations with strangers who seemed to view her as nothing more than an accessory to Jake's wealth and success. She felt invisible, her opinions and ideas brushed aside in favor of more important discussions. It was easy to see how out of place she felt, but when she glanced at Jake across the room, he smiled at her, his eyes filled with warmth. In that moment, she realized that it wasn't the world they were in that mattered, it was the connection between them. She wasn't just a placeholder in his life. She was someone he truly cared about. As the evening came to a close, Jake walked her outside, away from the noise and the bright lights. The cool night air hit her face, and she felt a sense of relief. "You okay?" Jake asked, his tone gentle. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, I don't know if I'm cut out for this world." Jake's expression softened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be. You just have to be yourself. And I like who you are, Emily. Don't ever forget that." She looked up at him, feeling the sincerity in his words. Maybe she didn't need to fit into his world. Maybe the world they created together could be something entirely their own. As they stood there, under the glow of the streetlights, Emily realized that this wasn't just a fairy tale. It was real. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in a future with Jake. A future where love wasn't about wealth or status, but about the connection between two people who had found each other against all odds. The days after the gala felt like a whirlwind to Emily, her heart still racing from the emotional intensity of that night. She had never felt more out of place, but Jake's words lingered in her mind. "You don't have to be part of this world, Emily. You just have to be yourself." His reassurance had been like a balm to her wounds, but the doubts still lingered. The world of luxury, business dinners, and high society wasn't something she had ever imagined herself in, and she struggled to accept that she might actually be able to fit into it. After all, she was just a waitress with big dreams, not a glamorous socialite like the women she'd seen at the gala. She spent the next few days avoiding those thoughts, focusing instead on her job and the small moments she shared with Jake. He continued to reach out, texting her throughout the day, making plans for the weekends, and inviting her to family events. It all felt so natural, yet so foreign to her. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting shift, Emily was sitting at her apartment, feeling drained, when she received a call from Jake. "Hey, how are you doing?" His voice was warm, comforting, and it immediately lifted her spirits. "I'm okay, just tired. I don't know how you do it, going to all those business meetings and parties all the time," she replied, running a hand through her hair. Jake laughed softly. "It's not all as glamorous as it seems. It's just business, you know? But hey, I was thinking we could do something low-key this weekend. How about a picnic in the park? Just the two of us, no fancy stuff." Emily felt a flutter in her chest. That sounded perfect. "I'd love that," she said, smiling to herself. "I could really use a break from all the chaos." When the weekend finally arrived, Emily met Jake at the park, where he had set up a picnic under a large tree. The sun was shining, casting a warm glow over the grass, and the air was filled with the sounds of birds chirping and children laughing in the distance. Jake was sitting on the blanket, a basket of food beside him, and he stood up as soon as he saw her. "Hey, you made it!" He grinned, and Emily couldn't help but feel at ease in his presence. As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about everything about their childhoods, their dreams, the things that scared them, and the things they wanted to accomplish. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she could truly be herself. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just two people sharing a quiet moment together. As the day went on, they walked around the park, hand in hand, enjoying each other's company. The doubts that had plagued Emily's mind began to fade away. She wasn't pretending anymore. She wasn't acting like someone she wasn't. She was just Emily, and Jake seemed to appreciate that. Later that afternoon, as they sat on a bench by the lake, Jake turned to her with a serious look on his face. "Emily, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice soft but earnest. "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I know this whole thing started off as a business arrangement, but I don't want to pretend anymore. I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone." Emily felt her heart skip a beat. "Jake, She trailed off, unsure of what to say. She had felt it too, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so real. "I care about you too," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. Jake reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I know we both have our doubts. I know this isn't easy, but I want to try. I want to be with you, not because of some arrangement, but because I believe we have something special." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at him. She had always been afraid of letting someone in, afraid of getting hurt. But something about Jake made her feel safe. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't pretending. "I'm scared, Jake," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I'm good enough for you." Jake cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away a tear. "You are more than enough. You always have been." He leaned in slowly, and before Emily could stop herself, she kissed him. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but one full of promise, full of hope. It was the kiss of two people who had found something real in a world full of fake promises. As they pulled away, Jake smiled at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. "I think we're just getting started, Emily, and I'm excited to see where this takes us." Emily smiled back, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. For the first time in ages, she believed in love again, in the possibility of a future that wasn't built on lies or expectations. She believed in them. Oh, the weeks that followed were both a blur and a dream for Emily. She was caught somewhere between disbelief and exhilaration. Every moment with Jake felt more and more like a beautiful reality, but a part of her was still holding back, unsure if she could truly be a part of his world. She had always known her place. She was just the waitress, a woman who struggled to make ends meet, never expecting to be someone's equal. But Jake had never made her feel small. If anything, he had made her feel like she was worth more than she had ever believed. Their relationship continued to grow, slowly but steadily. Jake would invite her to events, small dinners with friends, or quiet afternoons at his penthouse. They would talk for hours about their hopes, dreams, and even their fears. There were no secrets between them, or at least that was what Emily told herself. But still, there was something in Jake's eyes that sometimes made her wonder if he was holding back. His world was still so far from hers. He had a family that expected certain things, a company that demanded his attention, and a past he rarely spoke about. Emily, on the other hand, still felt the weight of her own past. She couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong in Jake's world, no matter how much he reassured her. One night, as they sat on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below, Emily finally found the courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at her for weeks. "Jake," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "what happens when this all gets too real? What happens when we have to face the world outside of this bubble we've created?" Jake turned to her, his gaze soft and intense. "Emily, I know this isn't easy. I know it's not always going to be perfect, but what I know for sure is that I want you in my life. I don't want to keep pretending, and I don't want you to feel like you have to be someone else. You've made me realize that the life I've been living, this perfect world of business deals and high society, has been empty. But with you, it feels real. It feels like I've finally found something worth fighting for." Her heart swelled in her chest as she listened to his words, but at the same time, a pang of uncertainty gnawed at her. She could feel the weight of the decision she was about to make. "And what about your family? Your ex-fiancé?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jake let out a deep sigh, his hand resting gently on hers. "My family, they've always had their expectations. And Claire, well, we've been over for a long time. I was just too afraid to let go. But you make me want to let go of all that. You make me want to build something real, something that's ours." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked at him, the vulnerability in his words moving her more than she had expected. "But I'm not like you, Jake," she said quietly. "I don't come from your world. I don't know how to fit in. I've always just been me." Jake smiled gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Emily, you don't have to change for me. I've seen the way you are with people, the way you care. That's what matters. I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to be you. That's the woman I fell in love with." Her heart swelled as she looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she truly believed him. She had been so afraid of not being enough, of never measuring up to the world he came from. But Jake had made her realize that she didn't need to fit into his world could fit around her. As they sat there, the city lights reflecting in the windows, Emily made a decision. She wasn't going to let her fears control her any longer. She wasn't going to run from this, or from him. "I want this," she said softly, her voice filled with certainty. "I want you. I'm ready to take that leap, Jake." Jake's eyes lit up, his smile wide and genuine. "You're not just ready to take the leap, Emily. You've already made it. You've already shown me what real love is." That night, as they kissed under the stars, Emily knew that everything had changed. They had crossed a line, but it wasn't just the line between their two worlds. It was the line between fear and hope, between doubt and certainty. And for the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to believe in the future they could have together. She had taken a leap, and Jake was right there to catch her. They weren't perfect, but together, they were exactly what they needed to be. And that was enough. The days after their conversation felt like a fresh start for Emily and Jake. There was a new sense of peace between them, a quiet understanding that whatever challenges they might face in the future, they would face them together. Jake had made it clear that he wanted her by his side, not just for the image or for appearances, but because he truly cared for her. Emily, for the first time, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be a part of this world. It wasn't about fitting into his life perfectly, but about finding a place for herself in it, as herself. A few weeks later, Jake invited her to a charity event he was hosting, one that would gather some of the most influential people in the city. Emily had never been to an event like this before. The thought of being surrounded by the city's elite made her stomach turn. But this time, she wasn't the nervous girl she had been at the gala. This time, she felt ready. She had Jake's hand to hold, and that made all the difference. As they arrived at the event, Jake introduced her to everyone with such pride, with such warmth. She wasn't just a +1 or an accessory to his world. She was his Time's world, and that made all the difference. As they mingled with the guests, Emily felt a sense of belonging that she had never experienced before. People weren't looking at her with judgment or with curiosity. They were genuinely engaging with her, appreciating her for who she was. The whispers, the doubts, that had once surrounded her in the high society world seemed to fade away, and for the first time, she realized that it didn't matter. What mattered was the way Jake saw her, the way he made her feel. As the night went on, Jake pulled her aside, away from the crowd, into a quieter corner of the venue. The lights were dim, and the city skyline stretched out before them, casting a soft glow over the scene. Jake took her hand, his gaze serious. "Emily," he said, his voice low, "there's something I need to ask you. I've thought about this a lot, and I know it's not perfect, but I want to spend my life with you." Emily's heart raced as she looked into his eyes, realizing what he was about to say. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake smiled, his eyes filled with love. "I mean, I want you to be my partner in every sense of the word. I want to build a future with you, Emily. Will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop around them. Emily's heart stopped for a moment as the reality of the question hit her. This wasn't just a fleeting moment or an impulsive decision. This was real. And in that moment, Emily realized that all of her fears, all of her doubts, had led to this. She had been scared of being unworthy, of not being enough for someone like Jake. But now, looking at him, she knew she was enough. She had always been enough. She just had to believe it. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at Jake, her heart full of love. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jake's face broke into a wide smile, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid to let go. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in that moment, a moment they would both remember for the rest of their lives. As they stood there, holding each other under the stars, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. They had built something together, something real, and she had never been more certain of anything in her life. Jake wasn't just a man with wealth and power, he was the man she had come to love, and together they would build a future filled with love, trust, and the promise of forever. In this touching and inspiring love story, a waitress and a successful CEO cross paths. Starting off as part of a business arrangement, but slowly discovering a deeper connection. This is one of the most captivating millionaire stories, as it explores how two people from different worlds can come together, despite their doubts and insecurities. From a fake date to real love, their journey is filled with emotional moments that highlight how trust, vulnerability, and understanding can break down barriers. As the story unfolds, the protagonist faces the internal conflict of being an outsider in a world of wealth and luxury. But she soon learns that what truly matters is love, not status. Like many millionaire stories, this one proves that no amount of money can replace the genuine bond formed between two people who are willing to let go of their fears and embrace their feelings. Will the difference in their social standing ultimately divide them, or will love conquer all? This is one of the millionaire stories where the characters grow, heal, and rediscover their worth through each other. With a heartwarming proposal and a leap of faith, this millionaire story comes full circle, reminding us all that love doesn't care about money, it cares about connection. Don't miss this unforgettable tale of love, transformation, and finding your true place in the world.